Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Brady. I am the Executive Director of the J.P. Morgan Center for Commodities at the University of Colorado Denver Business School. Thanks for joining our webinar. We're here to just to briefly talk about the Energy and Commodity Analytics class for analysts that's coming up next month. And I encourage anybody that has questions on this to put them into the chat. And we'll get those. But I'm here with Dan Jarrett. Dan is the instructor and has taught a number of classes for us in the Commodities Center for our master's level students. But he's also developed a course for executive education on this, on data analytics and for commodities. So with that, I'd like to kind of hand it over to Dan to provide a quick introduction, and then we have a few questions that we can kind of help go from there. But again, any questions, please put them into the chat. Thanks, Dan, for joining us.
Thanks, Tom. So my name is Daniel Jarrett. I am an adjunct instructor at the university. I've been working with the Commodity Center for, I think, coming up on 7 years. And so we have been developing academic courses for both undergraduates and graduates, as well as slowly kind of moving our way into executive education. And so this is a course that has been in development for quite some time. A little bit about me. As I mentioned, I'm an adjunct here in the business school. I've been with the university overall for almost 10 years, teaching courses in macroeconomics, commodity data and analytics, and then also econometrics and forecasting. In addition to that, I have my own economic advisory firm where I do very similar things, both professional education and then kind of in-house support with central banks, investment management firms, and other public and private companies. As far as the course goes, I'll give a brief overview, and I think we'll get into more information with some of the questions that Tom will ask. But it really is designed for practitioners who are in the commodity space. It's very data intensive, statistics intensive. It's designed for people kind of all skill levels. So there are some minimum requirements we'll probably get to. But what it's really designed to do is just introduce you to a broad array of different ways to look at commodity markets, commodity prices. That could be just trying to better understand what's happening today in the market. It could be focused on forecasting what's going to happen tomorrow or a month or a year ahead. So we do cover a very wide gamut of different methodologies, but it is a very intense focus on the empirical side of things. The course is taught using eViews, statistical software. And so for those of you unfamiliar with that, this is probably one of the best practices leading software packages for econometric modeling, for simulation, for forecasting. I've chosen this because it's incredibly user-friendly. And so you're able to get basically a free month of the software as you go through the course with us. And what's great about it is that it does integrate now with some of the other statistical packages and computer programs that are out there that a lot of people are working with. So that could be something like Python or R. So there's a lot of power to the program. Everything they're constantly updating, adding new features to it. And so it allows me to, since it is so user-friendly, it allows me to really focus on the content and not have people trying to get up a learning curve of, say, learning a new programming language at the same time. So that's kind of just a brief overview of the course. I'll turn it back to Tom for kind of maybe some more questions.
Great, Dan. Thank you. And just, I took this class last summer, and it was just a great refresher for me. Honestly, I hadn't had a lot of this material that Dan presented in over 25 years. So it was just a great class to get back up to speed in a lot of this area. But Dan, overall, when some of the questions we get, who is this course? Who would you recommend it for? What type of employee or individual?
Sure. I think the course, the way that we've designed the course is it is designed to be flexible for those who, are possibly kind of moving into this field and play a more technical role. And that could be, I don't want to exclude any positions, but this could be investment analysts. This could be analysts at energy and mining companies. This could be economists. But this could also be a course that would be really great for, for managers who are just wanting to maybe get their, kind of get a better understanding of the type of empirical data analysis that's going on in the commodity markets currently. So, so I think it is designed for people of varying skill sets. And as Tom mentioned, in our last summer class, we had people who were very new to the topics. And then we had some people who had gone through very rigorous academic programs, but just hadn't really, utilized the skill set in, say, the past 5 or 10 years. So, so I think it does fit well for people at varying levels.
Great. Great, Dan. And, would you say there's any prerequisites for this or a certain background that you would recommend for students?
At a minimum, I think it would probably, make the course a little bit easier to follow along if people have had, at least some basic statistics. And, in a perfect world, you've seen some regression analysis. Even if this is just kind of basic regression analysis, you might have done in a stats class using Excel or some other spreadsheet program. But I think, that would be, I think, kind of a good foundation to have coming into this. But I wouldn't expect anyone else to have any advanced analytics or econometrics course.
Okay. Just on your experience, both with the school as well as your advisory practice, how relevant is this course in the current energy and commodity markets?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Tom. I think about where we are right now in 2020, and if we just focused on a few different commodity complexes, say precious metals and energy, and we've seen some absolutely kind of historical movements. Look at energy prices, for example. I don't think anyone going into 2020 was going to expect a front month futures contract for Brent or WTI to actually become negative, for the first time. And then if you actually were then to look at, say, the gold market and what's been happening, with gold over the past, say, 6 months, hitting some new all-time highs. I think there's a lot of relevance there because what we spend a lot of time in the course is better understanding the history of the price series itself and the underlying statistical properties. And that in itself is a great tool set to have if you are a person who is thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow or next quarter or a year from now. So there's a lot of relevance, I think, with what's happening with just so much upheaval in the global economy right now.
Yeah, and Dan, from sitting in your class, and what I find with students here at the business school, it's not just the techniques to develop models. It's really at the base level you're asking, does it make economic sense? And I really liked how you emphasize that all throughout this class. What would you say like the key takeaways for this class is Dan?
So, the way that the course is really structured is, and then the one thing I will say is that the way that this is designed is it moves sequentially. So what's great with a course that focuses on time series data analysis, econometrics, and forecasting is that, we'll start with basically, say, looking at just the price of oil, and it'll be a very deep dive into better understanding how to analyze a price series itself, and how to use that price series and the history of that series to maybe make some very short-term forecasts or just better understand the short-term economic environment or market environment. But then as the course progresses, the material builds on itself. And so by the time we get to the end of the course, what we're starting to look at is how could we model long-run equilibrium relationships that might exist between two commodities. And this could be something like, looking at crude oil and what its long-run relationship is with gasoline, which would be a direct output of that. Or it could be looking at something like the gold-silver ratio, which has become, quite popular to discuss these days. So the idea is to leave participants with an ability to use sound statistical techniques to be able to look at short-term trends, but then also to be able to better understand what happens, over the course of the long run.
Great. The last question I have, and then we'll see if there's any questions with our audience, but how is this course beneficial for energy and commodity professionals within their organizations?
Sure. Well, I think this kind of gets back to where we are currently, sitting in 2020, and that, 10 years ago, there would be nowhere near the amount of data available to us that we have available to us today. Not only that, a lot of the techniques that we're seeing, a lot of these new data science techniques, at their core, they're extensions of a lot of the material that we're going to cover in this course. And when I think about what an organization can take away from one of their employees or a group of them coming to a course like this, is not only can they better utilize the data that they have available to them, but also it's a way to better understand and be able to better communicate that data, and turn it into decisions that can be made by upper level managers. And I think we're getting to a point where throughout an organization there has to be more data fluency. And that's not only just understanding individual series, but then also understanding how commodities relate to the overall global economy, or how two markets might exist and or coexist together. So I really do think this skill set is applicable throughout organizations. And I think it's also something that organizations it's a building block, and it's a foundation that I think they can kind of build upon going forward.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of the actual format of it and time commitment of the class, Dan, could you just format, probably going to be virtual, how many hours a week, how you've kind of structured the class?
Yeah, so we're set up for this upcoming course in October to meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we're going to meet for 2-hour blocks. And of course, that in today's current environment, this is going to be virtual. So we'll utilize Zoom, and we'll also utilize some software that we have through the university to distribute materials, to keep to start any type of chat amongst students. So I'm not going to, I know anyone who decides to make a time commitment like this, I know it's a big commitment in addition to everything else they might have professionally. So, my idea is that, we work really hard on those 2 hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then I can come up with, and I can send along some exercises to work through that we can review at the start of each session that helps reinforce, the topics throughout the course. So, I really do think that the format worked, has been working great, and I think I think people will find that it's a very manageable pace, and there's a very manageable amount of information.
Okay. And what would you say about those that are working full time? Is this a good course for them?
I do. I think it's manageable. I really do. And I think that if it's, I think this skill set, if it's something that you're trying to apply, one of the things that you could be doing is actually, is taking the material in the course and then, maybe directly trying to apply it to the problem at hand that you might have going if you are working full time. So I do think it's very manageable. So.
Another question just came through. The 2-hour lectures. Outside of working hours. I know we recorded them first go around, but what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so in addition to the 2 hours that we meet, I will have extra materials, and that will be voluntary for you to work through. But it would really reinforce the topics, and so we found that there's a pretty good flow. So if you could commit the 2 hours Tuesdays and Thursdays to the course, and then be able to commit, let's just say maybe 2 to 3 hours sometime throughout the rest of the week, whether that be over the weekend or whatnot, to either review some of the material or to work through some of these example homeworks that I'll be passing out as we get through the course, I think that would be a very manageable time commitment.
Yeah. I mean, I've even found myself, Dan, from the last class, and as I'm trying to develop some forecast models for silver, for example, being able to just sit down with some of the previously recorded lectures and a question coming through, if a firm does not use eViews, does the material transfer to other software?
It does, and I will be very upfront about that. The concepts that we're going to cover are really foundational to time series analysis, to forecasting methodology, and even, like I said, these are very foundational to some of the newer data science techniques. I myself teach courses in eViews, and then in other endeavors, I work in R, I work in Python, and I can tell you up front that everything that we will do in this course is transferable to, I know, for those two statistical languages, but then also if you were, say, a Stata user or a SAS user, yes, so there's a lot of transferability. And what I would say too is that eViews has worked really hard to kind of keep up. They know that they're a proprietary software rather than being open source, say like a Python or an R, but they integrate now fully. So, and this is something that I have come around to in the last couple of years, is that I think a lot of us operate under this assumption that we kind of have to pigeonhole ourselves into using, I'm an R user or I'm an EVs user. And now what I can do is I can do a lot of my work in EVs. And then if there's something maybe higher level that EVs won't do, I can actually pass the data into Python or R and perform the calculations in R that I need to, and then bring the data back into EVs. And so there is this two-way data pipeline that exists between EVs and multiple other languages and statistical software. So there's a lot of flexibility now.
Dan, question on, is the course able to discuss how electricity markets and maybe, and states manage their purchasing? I'm trying to.
We probably wouldn't get into that level of specificity. Where I can see electricity coming into the course is, potentially using, some electricity data, generation data for an example on, how to build seasonal models or how to forecast, load, with a seasonal component. But, the focus is really truly on kind of the empirical data analysis side. And so, just due to time constraints, we really won't be doing deep dives into kind of market conditions or how markets are working.
I did, you did really cover a pretty wide swath of various commodities, whether they were in the ag sector or metals or energy. So, I'm going to kind of run through all the questions that our audience had at the moment. If there's any others, please type them in or let us know. But anyway, Dan, I think it was, I can't help promote this enough. It was just a great class for me to be able to reacquaint myself with a lot of this material. And so thanks for your time today. Thanks for all that we're being able to participate with us, and let us know if there's any questions about the class that's upcoming. Thanks for your time.